Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to talk about Sedna in the sign of Gemini today. So, welcome everyone online. And if you are watching this as a recording, then today we will be talking about the Sedna movement into the sign of Gemini. We are not going to be talking about Sedna in the 12 signs or in the 12 houses to be precise, because she will be spending 40 years here. So this is more a collective energy, actually, rather than something to do with personal level. But let's not forget, obviously, if something big happens in the world and this movement is big, then you are going to get impacted by it anyway on a personal level as well. Yes, I did go through. Thank you very much. I did lose loads of weight. I'm only about 8, 10 kilos from my ideal weight now. I've got some bandage on me, if you can see, but I'm strong. Yeah, I'm all good. So nothing to complain about. Great. And just a quick announcement. I am starting next week the Abundance webinar, or actually, it's going to be a course. And today is the last day if you want to be signing up with a discounted price. It's going to be a 12-week course all about your personal finances. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen and we're going to start talking about Sedna because this is an interesting object. Now, if you want to look at where Sedna is in your personal chart, then go on astro.com and add the additional objects. The astrological number is 90377. Maybe I'm going to disappear soon from the screen, so you will be able to just focus on the the PowerPoint presentation. And as usual, if you would like the PowerPoint presentations, drop me an email and I will send it over to you. Otherwise, this recording is not going to get sent out, and I'm not sharing the slides either unless you personally request it. So, Sedna in Gemini, what we're going to be talking about today is what Sedna is actually, how you can work with Sedna on a personal as well as on a collective level, because I'm going to give you hints and tips about Sedna in a personal chart as well, when it's very prominent. And finally, we're going to try to put it together with the sign of Gemini, because it's going to be spending there 40 years. So its astrological number is 90377. So you just add that onto the additional object. And I would say you do have got a powerful Sedna in your chart. If it connects any of your personal planets tightly, I would never give more than 2-degree orb or your angles. Okay, then in that case, you have got a very prominent Sedna. Now, interesting, the first thing I would like you to look at, and maybe you want to type it into the chat box, but when you look at its glimpse, what does that remind you of? When you look at its glimpse, what does that remind you of? So a little bit of a theoretical question here. So pop it into the chat box. Saturn, exactly. So Sedna is going to carry loads of Saturnian qualities with that. Exactly. It's kind of like almost a full Saturn. Now, when we actually look at the discovery chart, I mean, there are two discovery charts running around, okay? I would like to point out. So whether the rising sign is accurate or not, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I went with this one because it makes more sense. Now, one of the reasons why I think maybe this is the right one, because Pluto and Sedna have been trining each other for this year. And obviously, we do see some uplifting energies around the world. I mean, when it comes to COVID and all these type of things, not so much of a restriction anymore and so forth. That's one thing why I thought it might be the Capricorn rising sign. I think there is a Cancerian rising sign running around as well. But anyway, what's interesting to see here in this discovery chart, that we do have got quite a prominent Saturn running here. And I thought that because the glymph looks like Saturn, so it would make more sense to actually have a Capricorn rising sign rather than a Cancer rising sign. Because if you look at it, Saturn would be ruling the chart here, the ruler of the rising sign. And Saturn is actually right in the sign of Cancer on 12 degree. And what you're going to straight away see here is that Saturn has got this yacht going on between Neptune and Mercury. Now, this is something to do with mental clarity. This is something to do with awakening. Neptune and Mercury is all about being confused about something, kind of like a mental fog, if you like it. And Saturn actually wants you to gain clarity, or kind of wants you to hash away all this mental fog around your brain. But also from a political point of view, because Saturn does rule politics, right? So it could really talk about all the mixed messages what we receive. And at the end of the day, all you need to do is just to look at your emotional foundation as well as your home environment. Now we can go on and on about this Saturn, Mercury, Neptune combination here. I don't want to spend too much time on the discovery chart. But, you know, when we discover a new object, one of the things you're always going to do is you're going to look at the discovery chart, okay? Because that's going to give you themes about the meaning of the planetary energy. Now, you see also that Saturn is actually opposing Chiron here. Okay, so it really talks about, I tend to call Chiron as a butterfly without wings. Okay, it is not able to fly because it has got some discoveries to do. It has got some transformation to go through. And when it connects actually to Saturn, you know, it's kind of like, imagine, for instance, in the political world that I am unable to fly because I don't have the wings, right? Or I don't have the support. We can also call it that way. Saturn in Cancer is very much about the security system anyway. So Cancer as in your home environment, but also the country you live in. So it might be shaken up, and I tend to associate Sedna with the kind of like the security system of a country, if you like it. And obviously, it can indicate that something is not necessarily kind of like secure at places where we live. And let's be honest, we tend to be seeing that. Okay. But also what we see here in this discovery chart, a couple of interesting things. The sun is in the sign of Scorpio. So if you start thinking about what sun is, because that's the soul of the chart, right? Then Scorpio is all about being afraid, but also something to do with the financial system, other people's money, the power system, right? Or to see kind of like, you know what, there is power around us. We are just meant to be grabbing that power. We need to utilize that for our best, you know, in the bestest way, if you like it. But also you can see that moon is in the sign of Virgo. Now, the two most controlling signs of the zodiac is about Scorpio and Virgo anyway. So this chart is full of controls. When I share the mythological story of Sedna, then most likely you will understand why the control was so important anyway in her life. So, but Moon in Virgo is all about, you know what, it can represent crisis situation around parents, or it could talk about the death of the feminine, but also the death of the service industry, if I start combining the Scorpio and the Virgo elements. But also it's something to do with the feminine power, whether I'm forced to be, you know, a woman, or whether I'm forced to be cooking or tidying up or all those type of things. So it's about kind of like creating a cozy home environment, you know, that could something to do with the moon in Virgo. And of course, from a political or mundane level point of view, this could really talk about the food industries. And maybe the food industries are going to be changing significantly. But when I put this Scorpio and Virgo together, both of them have got trust issues. So I think that Saturn in Cancer is really much about trusting your intuition, right? And that would make sense with the Neptune and Mercury mental fog, because we are meant to be clearing that away. So this is going to be one of the meanings of Sedna. There is loads, so I'm going to share all those. Now, the tightest aspect, actually, what we have got in the chart is actually a Mars-Saturn trine. So you can see here, Saturn is on 12 degree and Mars is on 15 degrees. So this is pretty tight. Now we are talking about two malefic planets. Even a trine can be sometimes a little bit difficult with that. But Saturn and Mars is all about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and fighting for something which is right, knowing that I'm going to get to the end of the tunnel. I tend to call Saturn and Mars as the long distance runner. If we never give up, we are going to be achieving something surely. So Mars, Saturn, from very short, these are very short descriptions of what I put down there. Obviously, I would be able to talk about those aspects minimum 45 minutes each, which we're not going to do. But it talks about strong will, great stamina, endurance, but also holding on to something to the bitter end. Now, this is going to be a huge statement. Again, you will see from Sedna stories why. Another one is the Mars square Venus, which is talking about unhappy love affairs. Now, typically Mars square Saturn is a challenging aspect. Sorry, Mars square Venus is a challenging aspect, especially when it comes to love stories, because somehow the female and the male archetypes are not integrated within one person. So therefore, it might indicate some type of difficulties when it comes to love stories. But also, this is not the easiest one when it comes to synastry either. However, it can bring great chemistry with someone, but eventually maybe the two parts somehow start having clashes. But also Mars and Venus archetype always have got some type of fear of commitments. Now, when you look at those, I mean, of course, we are mutable signs, so the fear of commitment is strongly gonna be there. Not to mention that Venus has got quite a tight conjunction to Pluto as well. So it's very much about trying to maintain my freedom, Sagittarius. Therefore, I'm controlling my own destiny. But also, Sagittarius is famous for looking for a way out. But secondly, it's looking for the meaning to life. And maybe this Mars and Venus square could really talk about that. I'm just, keeping my love story in a sense private because I want to find that special one. And what's the point in me giving up my freedom, when I don't love someone? This is going to be a very powerful statement again from Sedna's history, but you will see that. So this is briefly the discovery chart, what we see. And also, the reason why I wanted to make this video today is because can you see that when Sedna was discovered, it was on 17 degree of Taurus. And we did have the the Uranus North-Node conjunction happening on 18 degree of Taurus. And Mars and Urania was on 17 degree of Taurus at that moment of conjunction. So this is a pivotal time. And also, if this is the right discovery chart, the days for sure, the timing, which is questionable, but then Pluto is back and forth on the rising sign. But I'm going to speak about that a little bit more in depth, but surely I think that Uranus North-Node conjunction on 18 degree, and this Sedna is almost on 18 degree as well anyway, 1755. So it really talks about a rebirth of the feminine power in the next 15, 16 years. Most likely, this is one of the statements or predictions I'm going to make. We are going to be seeing more female politicians, more female bosses. Whether it's good or bad, I leave that with you, and you're going to decide whether you like the idea or not. But surely, I think this is going to be a very significant topic there. Great. So that's one thing I wanted to show you. Now, Sedna was discovered in 2003, 14th of November, by a German astrologer, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe he wasn't German because the name doesn't look German, but anyway, Germans had something to do with Sedna. It was by Michael Brown. Now, one interesting factor I would like you to remember in regards to Sedna, that has got the biggest orbital period currently. Okay. Now that is 11,400 years. Very long time. Pluto only has got a 250 odd years and so forth. Another interesting factor is that Sedna has got this egg-shaped orbit. Why is that interesting? The reason why it's interesting is because in some sign it's gonna spend, let's say, 100 years. In some signs it's gonna spend 40 years. That's kind of like the minimum, by the way. And the longest Sedna can spend in a sign is 1,000 years in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, I'm not too sure what does that mean, Anastasia, this number 5 with loads of stars. Maybe your keyboard got crashed. Now, obviously, when Sedna is in the sign of Sagittarius, we have got loads to learn. There is a reason for a planetary body to spend 1,000 years in a sign, okay? In the sign of Gemini, it's going to be relatively a small period of time. Average, it's about 42 years. Okay, so it's quite a short period. Now, we had Sedna in Aries in between 1863 to 1967. And when you look at Sedna, or when you look at any bigger planetary movements, what you should be always doing is look at the beginning, because the first couple of years is going to tell you what the planetary energy want to do. And also, when it gets to the end of the era, you might want to be looking at what was going on in the history, because it's coming to an end in one way, or secondly, it wants to reform that energy. So 1863, which was really about the birth of new nations, this period. Then we had the world wars, and we had the emancipation of the women. The suffragettes really came around. And basically, this has ended with a bra burning 60s. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not going to speak about that too much. But obviously, Aries is about identity. So Sedna was transforming the identity of women here, because Sedna is a female archetype. So it's going to talk about females quite a lot. Now, in Sedna in Taurus, which started in 1965 and then 1967 due to the retrograde period, and then it's finishing its journey in 2023, sometimes in the summer. This was really about financial growth. This was a period of time when women actually could start working and make their own money. And obviously, in a sense, they were fighting for equality as well, so that they can make exactly the same money like men can. Okay? But also, this is about your value system. This is about your possession, an element of a greediness as well, right? I want more and more. Sedna was a bit greedy. We're going to look at that story shortly. And now it's going to go into Sedna, it's going to go into the sign of Gemini. This is going to be the unlimited knowledge, the artificial intelligence, period. By the way, Sedna plays quite a significant role in financial astrology, which I will be talking about in the financial course. Not today, but one of the reasons astrologers tend to associate Sedna a little bit with financial, because obviously it spent approximately 60 years in the sign of Taurus. And it just got discovered recently. So what we saw with Sedna in the sign of Taurus is that, the financial system has changed significantly. However, I don't think Sedna has got so much to do with the financial market. But there was some very interesting historical moments when Sedna and Uranus were in some aspects, and the financial markets crashed and so on. Obviously, Sedna is about dying. That's going to be one of the meaning of that. So with Uranus, it could be talking about a sudden death, and in the sign of Taurus, which is about the financial system in the world anyway. Now, Sedna will enter the sign of Gemini on the 16th of June, and it's going to be there till the 22nd of November. And then the final entry into the sign of Gemini is on the 28th of April 2024. And then it's going to be staying there for a good 40 years. So the 16th of June and 22nd of November is actually going to be an important period of time because it will reveal what to expect in the next 40 years on a personal and on a physical level as well, or Monday level. You might want to keep an eye on that. Now, let's just discover Sedna. So, actually, let me just switch up the camera here so you see the presentation more. Sedna, I mean, some of the astrologers and astronomers believe that when we discover a new planetary body, it is a time when somehow there is a different layer of the humanity which we need to embrace. Now, obviously, one of the last planetary body or planets, let's call planets, we discovered was Pluto, okay, which was in 1930. And it has got an orbital period of 250 years. Sedna takes 11,400. So the distance is huge. Okay, of course, there are other trans-Neptunian and TNO objects which we discovered. We're not going to focus on those today, but the distance between Pluto and Sedna is huge. Anyway, so we say that when we discover something new, it's because the humanity is ready to move forward. But of course, it takes time to actually embrace that new unconscious energy, if you like. And the beginning always a difficult part because who wants to integrate new energies, right? But Sedna is somehow the depiction of a new reality that we can go way beyond our own imagination because it's very far from our, imagined solar system, what we kind of believed to have out there. Now, let's have a look at this mythology a little bit. So, originally, she is a sea goddess, and she was the goddess of animals and marines, but she wasn't always like that. What happens was that she was growing up with her dad. We don't have information about what happened to her mom. Which I find interesting because Moon in Virgo could really talk in the discovery chart. It could really talk about something to do with problems or crisis situations around the mom, as I said. But also very interesting here to see that Moon was on 29 degree of Virgo. So obviously the 29 degree is a karmic degree, which is really talking about, some type of crisis degree. I mean, crisis situations when an era is coming to an end and the new one is going to start. Okay. In regards to wives, whatever the moon is, okay, emotions, wife energy, being a lover or wanting to be a working class woman or all those type of things. Okay, so, but anyway, and then what happened was the father really wanted her to get married. And she refused kind of to grow up. She just wanted to stay at home. And she was like, you know what? I'm not going to get married. Or I'm just only going to get married when I'm going to fall in love, when someone is going to sweep down off my feet. So the father kept bringing these handsome local guys, but she did not take notice of anyone. Now, let's just go back to the discovery chart. Can you see Saturn in the sign of Cancer, right? Because what is Cancer? It's basically a protective shell. And I don't want to come out of it. And Saturn, which is kind of like a spinster energy, I just want to stay at home alone. I'm fine with that, and so on. And there's the ruler of the chart. So it's something to do with the family background. Most likely she was very hurt somehow by not having that mom archetype because something to do with the restriction of the female parent, as in Cancer, but overall just family. Anyway, taking the story further, the father one day decided, you know what, enough is enough. You must mature, you must grow up. So there was this guy who came around, he was interested, and the father exchanged her for a piece of fish. And this guy took her, which he turned out that he was basically an evil crow spirit. Because eventually he revealed his true form. How she was taken away, by the way, because she didn't want to get forced. She was rebellious about it, so she had to be given a sleeping potion. And the guy was kind of carrying her on his back, and then he took her to an island. And when she woke up, she looked around and then she saw that basically she was actually trapped. Now, the father regretted his decision, and he wanted to save her, but it was a little bit too late. Obviously, he managed to kind of get her out of this island, but what this evil crow spirit did, that he sent a huge storm on them to stop them. And the father got scared of dying. So he decided to kill his own daughter, and then he pushed her into the sea. But what happened was Sedna was actually clinging and holding onto the boat with her fingers. And in order for her to kind of sink, the father started to push her down finger by finger. So eventually she sank, and obviously she was meant to die, but she didn't. She became half human and half fish, and she became this beautiful sea goddess. And she realized of her own potentials, as in how much she can influence the sea as a kind of spirit as well, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much the story behind her. So what did we learn from this story? On one hand, we did learn about how much we are actually holding on to our old life, when there is always the potential of going through a rebirth. So it's about not seeing your true, your best potentials, the best abilities, what you've got. So therefore, it does talk about the unrecognition of your own talents. Obviously, it was discovered in the sign of Taurus as well, which is talking about your talents. But also, the fact that she was trapped in an island, so it really talks about how much we are trapped in our comfort zone. And Uranus Northern conjunction happened on Sedna, on the discovered Sedna point. So definitely in the next 15, 16 years, we are going to be pushed to get out of our reality and see the bigger picture. Because think about it, I become the goddess of the sea. The sea is vast, it's endless. So Gemini, let's just start thinking about that. Gemini is information. So it's about vast knowledge. Maybe vast knowledge of the sea, and we're going to discover new species. But also, maybe we discover, because Gemini can represent towns and cities. So it might be the discovery of old, lost old cities and towns. But most likely, some of the towns are going to be in danger as well because they're going to sink. And maybe Hawaii is a little bit at a danger from an astrological perspective, but I'm going to come on to that, okay? Why I think they might be a little bit danger. But also this could really talk about that there is a huge storm or a flood is coming, which is kind of going to wash away one of these cities, towns, villages, and all those type of things. Let me just talk about that a little bit more, because You might have heard, but recently we did have some volcano eruptions going on. We had flooding going on quite a lot in Australia and all those type of stuff. And we are going to be having an eclipse also coming up in 3 days' time, which I have to post the video about, so I have to do that. But the last time we had an eclipse happening exactly on the same degree was in 2003, in November, just around the discovery of Sedna. And at that time, Chiron was sitting on 29 degree of Taurus, where Sedna is sitting right now. It's very, very interesting. And all of a sudden this week, we had all these floods going on. We had some terrible loss of life in South Korea. We had these Halloween festivity problems. We had a bridge collapsing in India. Obviously, Ukraine, let's not even mention that. We had this volcano eruption happening. The volcano eruption was the one where Chiron was actually on 29 degree of Taurus, and it happened in Hawaii, by the way. And that volcano eruption lasted for a month. Every single day, there was something going on around it. So, but anyway, Australia, I don't, we keep having some flood issues there, as far as I remember. So, some natural disasters are still expected while Sedna is on 29 degree in the sign of Taurus, because it is really talking about, kind of like, oh, right? 2 days ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and we did have an earthquake here in Izmir, in Turkey, where I live. It only lasted for about 15 seconds, really, or maximum 20, but it was quite a strong one. It was a 5.1, maybe, or a 5.2 at the center of it. And at other places, it was a little bit lower, 4.8, 4.9. But I think the last time I experienced earthquake was about when I was about 7 years old, and that was only a 4.1 as well. So it was a little bit stronger. My doggies didn't really realize anything. But anyway, what else we learned about Sedna? Marriage. So marriage will change significantly, surely. Gemini is also about the merging of two souls, the feminine and the masculine, even though the Gemini sign is androgynous. So, meaning that, we don't really see the gender from that. But in either way, something around gender identification most likely will change significantly. But further meanings of Sedna. So, the realization of the fact that we cannot rely on anyone. I mean, Sedna couldn't even rely on her own father because she got betrayed by his own father, actually twice, right? But at the same time, this could also talk about the betrayal of the father from our point of view as well. In a chart where Sedna is prominent in your natal chart, this could really talk about that you have got some father image issues. Another father image issue actually in your chart is always Pallas Athene, okay? But Pallas Athene is the father and the daughter favoritism, okay? In negative aspects, it could really talk about father image issues. And same with Sedna too. Also, what happened? The father regretted his decision. So Sedna will represent regrets of doing something somehow where you build some type of form of guilt in your life. Also, she was a spoiled child. So it could really talk about me being a spoiled child if I have got a prominent Sedna, or having a spoiled child. Either way, that could be also a meaning. Also, think about it. The father wanted her daughter to grow up. She was forced to grow up. So Sedna, a prominent Sedna in your natal chart, talks about in what ways you are forced to grow up. Don't look at the sign when you are analyzing Sedna. The house position is a lot more important, okay? Because she spent 60 years in the sign of Taurus. So most of us actually have got it in the sign of Taurus, okay? And anyone who is above 60, 60-ish, they have got it in the sign of Aries. No one has it in the sign of Pisces, for instance, from at this moment, whoever is living, okay? But also, this is talking about pain through family. I don't think I need to explain that to you. By the way, when we are looking at the rulership of the signs, it's kind of like whenever a new planetary body is getting discovered, we always give them rulership as well. But they always become somehow the higher octave of the original ruler. Okay? So Pisces is ruled by, for instance, Jupiter. But the modern ruler would be Neptune. Well, the higher octave of Neptune would be Sedna then. Okay? So Jupiter's higher octave is Neptune. Neptune's higher octave is Sedna, and so forth. Also, it talks about violation, what we might go through. And then if you think about the Piscean energy anyway, then it does bring in the drama triangle, which is very much about being the persecutor, being the victim, or being the one who gets violated. So, there's the victim, sorry. Persecutor, victim, and what's the third one? Oh my days. Victim, and then I blame them, I pointing at them, and then in the end, I'm judging them. It just doesn't, the savior, that's the one. Thank you. So the savior, okay? So Sedna kind of carries that energy because she was the victim of her own father. She became the victim of this crow spirit as well, right? And then she got killed, but she was saved, really. And she found a new meaning to her life. Also, it could really talk about that you feel entitled about something. And I think the last 60 years in the sign of Taurus was really about that. That you know what, you can feel entitled to have money, to have possessions, but it's the sudden realization that nothing is really yours. At the end of the day, it belongs to someone. You might have a house, but it still belongs to the government anyway, even though you paid for it. Somehow everything can be taken away from you. That's also a meaning to Sedna. And of course, this is a relationship energy. Now, relationship energy in a sense of between humans and animals. So I think there is going to be a lot more words and information about animals. We're going to get a lot better knowledge about the behavior of animals, the extinction of animals, and so forth. But at the same time, I think it does talk about human relationships as well, as I said. And I think the gender identification is going to be the biggest topic around that. And most likely, whether you agree or disagree, but I think cloning of animals and humans are going to be a huge topic in the next 40 years due to food shortages. And most likely, I don't think it's going to be due to people, not having enough people. I think it's going to be more about birth control. But I'm going to come on to that birth control matters shortly. And also, it does talk about a person who is full of disobedience, right? Because she doesn't want to follow whatever the family is saying. So, in a sense, it does talk about a rebellious energy, kind of like someone who is outbreaking, you know. So, we should expect something with Sedna around that too. Now, further meanings, just to going a little bit faster with that because I wanted to finish in 70 minutes and we all only on slide 4. But it talks about, for instance, someone who can become a gold digger, someone who is kind of like a diva or a pimp. Obviously, we're talking about the crow spirit here. Someone who shows up and they don't show themselves the way they are because they are kind of like wearing a disguise. I think this is also going to be extremely potent in the sign of Gemini because that's a two-faced energy anyway. And from a financial point of view, it could talk about economic, financial crisis situations, but also money made in a dirty way. And even drug abusers are associated with Sedna also. Now, I'm not 100% sure if the dirty cash or the financial economic situation really belongs here. Obviously, it's something which we only discovered approximately 20 years ago, and we don't have enough information of what to expect, in other signs, unless you look at the history. But also, it really talks about being stabbed in the back, or it could talk about that you have to bow down in front of others because you are told or you feel blackmailed and you want to go against the system in a way, or you want to go against the knowledge in the sign of Gemini, what they are telling you because you don't believe in those. I do believe that those who are going to be stubborn, because that's the story behind Sedna. Those who are going to be stubborn and they don't want to embrace the new information ahead of us, most likely going to suffer the most. And it might sound harsh, and I'm sure some people will say that, oh, listen, this is one of the biggest problems what we have at the moment, that everyone is entitled and everyone thinks they know everything. And, we have got so much information going around. And of course, the discovery chart shows a Neptune and the Mercury aspect with Saturn anyway. So the misinformation and so forth are there, but you're going to have faith in something. Now, let's just talk about that Sedna in the sign of Sagittarius for a second, because Gemini is the opposite sign from Sagittarius, and Sedna spends 1,000 years there. So what does it really tell me is that when Sedna went into the sign of Sagittarius, that was really a period of time when the gurus appeared, the religion appeared. So the opposition could really talk about the end of those. I don't believe these gurus anymore. I don't believe the teaching of Victor. Okay, and I want to walk away from. Or I don't want to believe in whatever we don't want to believe in, because you know what? We have got more knowledge now. So maybe, this Sedna Victor is holding a presentation about it, and in a couple of years' time, we're going to get to know something about Sedna and new discoveries, and then Victor was talking rubbish. This is the type of knowledge what might be changing. But that knowledge is not fully transparent with that Neptune, Mercury, and Saturn, what actually I was talking to you about. And Saturn is the harsh reality. So some knowledge will come through in a very harsh way, which we are not expecting. But also Sedna represents a blind spot in the chart, something that you might not see or you don't want to see, or it represents things what you want to accept and things you don't want to accept, therefore you don't want to change. Because she didn't want to go towards her spiritual karmic mission, right? And all she had to do was to get married to someone she likes. She refused to do that. Also, it is talking about, I mean, what am I expecting in the sign of Gemini? So on one hand, because it's sitting on 29 degree of Taurus, the current financial system will die and the new system is starting. And I think everyone will agree with me here that there is no other way to go about this. The current money system, what we have, is not working. This is only going to be my personal opinion, by the way, whether you take it or not. But I think what happened was when they discovered this free movement, okay, of people, that was really the era where people just wanted to make more money, okay? Um, because the bigger companies needed cheaper workforce. And what I see now in the world is that England is looking for workers. Obviously, they left the EU. Most of the Europeans went home. And currently, what's happening is that they don't have enough workforce. Now they are changing their visa system. They are actually calling up people or different countries. Let's make some negotiations. Send me some people to work. You know, I'm not saying, by the way, whether it was stupid to leave the EU or it wasn't stupid. Nothing like that. Okay. Um, but this free movement, in my opinion, was very much about the ability to make more money and to find better workers, in a sense, who work cheaper as well. So it was really about saving money. Now, Sedna is sitting on 29 degrees the last 1 year, and it's going to be there for another 1 year or a little bit longer as well, because it's going to go back into the sign of Taurus. I think the next 2 years, basically, we're going to see that the financial system is changing significantly. And I'm very certain about that because Uranus will be also hitting 29 degrees of Taurus in a few years' time as well. So most likely new currency, end of a currency or one of them, a new paying method. Maybe it's not going to be bank card readers anymore, whatever it is, but something new is coming there. Also, what else is Gemini? Communication. Most likely some technological advancement in the communication fields, most likely this metaverse type of thing. Maybe it's not metaverse, but something similar is gonna grow so much. The computers will become completely and utterly indisposable because you are going to be doing everything on computer. Even when you go to the toilet, most likely you have to program your computer to take my bum out there. It's going to be insanely computer focused. Obviously, don't take me too seriously, okay? It was just kind of like an extreme joke there with your bum being taken to the toilet. But one of the reasons I kind of wanted to come up with an example is because the opposite sign is Scorpio, right? From Taurus, which is about flushing something through, okay? So it's kind of like imagine that you get your money and then you're going to flush it down on the toilet because it's going to be useless somehow. But Gemini is a mental energy. So the transformation of the brain waves, discoveries around brain research overall is going to be huge. Most likely we will be, because Gemini is also about travel, we're going to reach way further points in the sky than ever before. So loads of discoveries. As I said, maybe it's going to be the bottom of the sea, but it can be the sky as well because Gemini is an air sign. Okay. So something in the sky is actually possible too. But also Gemini rules nerve system. So the neurological discoveries most likely is going to be huge. And I can actually imagine the discovery of an alternative world. Maybe it's just a parallel world. Maybe, I don't know, there's going to be a veil and then we can pull the veil down and then we see something on the other side. And this is what we're going to call as metaverse anyway. This is exactly what they kind of plan, right? That we're going to do everything in a virtual reality in a sense. But also, Gemini is all about travel, especially on dry lands though. So very fast trains. I think there is going to be just as fast trains as planes, but also fast cars, talkative cars, which we have already seen anyway, but it's going to spread significantly. Also, just somehow faster was the transportation in a sense. Also, Gemini does rule media. Now, as much as it hurts to say, but I think media, there is going to be different type of media system. But the realization that media is controlling our lives, whether it's gonna happen even more, or there is gonna be this very last struggle of killing the media system and to replace that with something else. Can I imagine media to die off? Can you imagine to media to die off? I don't think so. I mean, at the moment, I can't imagine that. And I'm guessing you can't imagine that either. But also, Gemini is about phones. If you think iPhone 14 is a mega good phone now, most likely, maybe it's just 5 years down the line, but we're going to be laughing at it, how primitive phone it was. So something around phones, communication devices. Gemini can talk about translation. Most likely, we're going to be able to translate a foreign language without any hardship. We just need a headset, for instance, and so forth. All these things. The positive side, these are positive as well, of course. But I would like you to think about how much of an emphasis we have on the air signs recently. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction happened on 0 degree of Aquarius. Then we're going to have Sedna moving into the sign of Gemini. Straight after, we have got Uranus moving into the sign of Gemini. And we haven't even spoken about the Uranus-Sedna conjunction, and we're not going to talk about that today. That's a good 3-4 years down the line, and I'm going to speak about that at that time anyway. And also, I do believe that the money is going to become virtual, so you're not going to have money anymore in your pockets very soon. Now, let's just talk about the mind side of that Gemini, right? Because it's a thinker. And what I'm afraid of is that the mental health problems are going to be growing significantly. And we're going to need the mental health care people more than ever. Why do I think that? Is because Sedna had her mental problems as well. Listen back to the story of hers, and then you're going to understand why. Okay? Moving forward a little bit, because I've got a little bit more to share. I did go through a little bit of the history when Sedna got activated, what was prominent, and I found a couple of interesting factors here. When COVID started, Sedna was bang on Algol, which is very much about losing the head, right? As the ancient people said. Well, Sedna died also. So COVID started when Sedna was on Argol. I mean, I know we're getting tired of this COVID, and we tend to be, looking at COVID from multiple angles. And I'm not gonna say that Sedna rules COVID, okay? And I'm not gonna say that Sedna rules any of the pandemics, because I still believe that pandemics belong to somehow to Neptune, as well as Pluto, and as well as Hygeia is playing a role there as well, just in a different way. But I found it interesting that Sedna was on the sign of Algol, which, let's be frank, was really much not the start, but the central or the peak period of our financial system to be crashing. Okay? Now, currently, Sedna is sitting on 29 degree of Taurus, which we also call as the Weeping Sisters. And what was I going to say about that? Now I lost my thoughts for a second. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what I wanted to say. But anyway, the Weeping Sisters are very much about the karmic ties. So I think it's somehow there is a need to karmically cut ties with our old life and then being replaced that with something new, you know. Yeah. Now, this is one of the most important aspects going on at the moment. Sedna trine Pluto. It started in February 2022, which is kind of interesting because COVID really started to die off just around that time anyway. And what is Pluto? Pluto is about control and money and the gift of the earth, if you like it. But also it does talk about how much we are controlled, how greedy we are, how selfish we are, because we only look at our own power, how we can have more and more of something. It's a planet of richness, if you like it. So there is always a desire with Pluto to have your own power. And I think the Sedna trine Pluto is really much about the realization that alone you are not going to be powerful. You need someone on your side. So this is a partnership aspect for me. And Pluto does talk about the merging of companies as well. So this could really talk about, you know what, as a company, I'm only going to survive if I merge with another company. Okay. So I think we're going to see that more in the next 2 years. But these connections must be genuine because Sedna doesn't want to get betrayed or doesn't want to feel left out as well as betrayed by someone else. Also, Pluto is something to do with your attachments. What are you attached to so badly? Sedna is attachments too, right? Because she was holding on to that boat and onto her whole old life as well. So what are you attached of? And you can actually discover that now and you can let it go in a certain sense. I would say this is a prominent transit for you if you've got any planets on 28 degree or 29 degree of the earth signs especially, or the mutable energies. Sorry, not the mutable energies, the fixed energies. As well as the cardinal ones, really, because Pluto is in a cardinal sign, Sedna is in a earth sign, fixed earth sign. But also, this could really talk about letting go of toxic situations. Let me point out that this lunar eclipse, which is actually coming up, it's an 8-pointed T-square. I'm going to make that video about it. You're going to understand why I'm talking about an 8-pointed T-square, but it will talk about letting go of certain things in our life anyway. And now we've got this Sedna trine Pluto. Basically, people who will allow themselves to let go of something will become the new winners. That's what I think this Sedna trine Pluto really talks about. People who will leave toxic situations and ready to start, ready to shift, ready to embrace something new. Sedna is going to get squared by Saturn in February 23, and most likely it will bring a record cold weather in 23 February. Therefore, your heating bills are going to be huge. And of course, look at it now, what's going on, electricity prices, all those type of things are extremely high. So I'm very afraid of this February 2023. But also, this could bring some power surge shortages as well, because there is still Uranus and Saturn square going on. Sedna will get switched on with this as well in February. Also, because it is happening on 29 degree of Taurus, which is very much about food, supply, right? The resources of earth, banking and financials. Pluto, which is accumulated wealth. So this would be talking about accumulation of food. Panic buying. We already had aspect between Sedna and Pluto, by the way. Uh, um, um, well, it started pretty much approximately about 1.5 years ago, because the Pluto-Saturn conjunction happened on 21 degree, and the Pluto became a little bit faster, and then all of a sudden it went up to 24, 25 degree, and Saturn was sitting on 28 degree at that time, so they were within 3 degree orb around that time. I also believe that some of the bigger companies and supermarkets will be closing down because they're not going to be able to make enough money. Also, bigger food chains will be leaving certain countries because maybe the tax is going to go up too much. By the way, this started happening in Hungary, for instance. I know that. I don't know if it happens in other countries, but in Hungary, certain companies such as Ocean, which is I think a French company, left because the tax situation became so high that they were like, listen, we are not making any more money. They took away the tax relief or the tax, not necessarily relief, but this tax benefit of companies. But also at the moment, plenty of restaurants are closing down. Why is that? Because the electricity bill became 15 times more, and they are like, we can't pay that. So something around this food matter is still really on the picture. So therefore, what's going to happen is that the cost of living of people are going to start growing. Now, can you see how Sedna and that partnership and the building on the local community, what I have been talking about for a while? You know what? Grow your tomatoes, grow your chickens. The neighbor is going to have the pigs and the potatoes, and you're going to have to start sharing if you want to save some money because something is cooking in the pot. I also believe that because Taurus is about housing, building, right? Taurus wants to build something. There is a crisis situation going on in the housing markets. Now, I think the houses are, I mean, what's happening currently in some parts of the world, that the blocks of flats became more expensive than the houses because the energy consumption is a little bit easier somehow in blocks of flats than houses. Whether, that's going to be happening there, but I don't think the house prices will go up more. I think the problem here is going to be the actual, utilities. So some utility crisis situation, surely. So, but it's moving into the sign of Gemini. So we kind of finished the current era. I mean, I could talk about the current one quite a lot because we also have got Sedna currently having yachts. I think 4 yachts going on at the moment with Humaya. We've got a lot more participant here. I don't want to talk about those so much because this presentation would take too long. But if you guys are interested in all these type of things and the breakdown of those yachts, just pop it into the YouTube comment box, and we can put something together about it as well. So I started talking about this Gemini already. I mentioned the communication, the travel, the way we deal with social media elements. The other couple of meanings of Gemini, without being very thorough, but it does talk about education, neighborhood, car industries. So those should be changing also significantly. I kind of believe that what's going to happen is that the schools are going to close down because they're not going to be able to pay the bills, and the education will go online. They're going to start trying to do bits and bobs to maintain the situation. But I think the private schools are going to be somehow getting more popularized, or just study at home, become a doctor from your computer type of thing. But online education will be more significant. Also, now another very interesting thing is that Sedna will be the closest to Earth ever in 2075 and 77. So that's for the younger population, by the way. Well, I would need to live another 50 years to kind of experience that. God knows. I hope I have got some chances. But that's definitely a major shift. I didn't necessarily look at that period so strongly, but what I saw is there was this T squared to Pluto and Uranus. I don't think I want to live around that time anyway with that T square to Pluto and Uranus because, yeah, I think that's going to be a very difficult period. But a positive one could be very much about the end of politics, the end of politics and the end of any type of monarchy and all those type of things. And it's very much about getting our freedom back. I will risk that there is going to be some war happening in 25 and 20, 75 and 77. But most of us won't see that. So that's for the younger generation. Another topics which I'm expecting with this Sedna in the sign of Gemini, genetic manipulation. uh, there is going to be new gurus who are going to be questioning the old themes of gurus, and probably the old ones somehow going to get humiliated. And we're going to come up with some new ideological type of things overall. Space exploration, I mentioned, and the birth control and the birth, the way we give birth. I think I'm not going to go into why Gemini can represent birth, okay? I'm going to teach about that tomorrow in my 12-week class. But the way we give birth to people surely will change, and that's going to be more technological also. And I still believe that the visa system will change significantly. This digital nomad thing might be coming to an end, even though it looks popular at the moment. It might be coming to an end. And we're going to have to learn to appreciate our neighborhoods more than ever. I just put down a couple of very interesting people with very prominent Sedna, because I think you should be looking at whether you do have got a prominent Sedna or not. So I put down a couple of them who has got Sedna conjunct in the ascendant, John Lennon and Leonardo DiCaprio. Try to think about, without me telling you, okay, how do we see this Sedna, for instance, in regards to Leonardo DiCaprio? I find it fascinating, by the way, that we have got the sinking ship, right, with Leonardo DiCaprio, and that brought his success. I find it fascinating. Think about how it's connected Lennon John, Kevin Costner, Audrey Hepburn, Jim Carrey, Jennifer Lopez, which is also very interesting because I think she is great. And actually now when Sedna is on 29 degree, she's actually raising voices about her not being appreciated. She never received an Oscar. She only had one nomination. Somehow she's looked down on because of ethnicity, according to her, in the US. And I think this ethical and moral code and religious matters, what we were talking about in regards to Sedna in the sign of Sagittarius, somehow, is it going to come to an end, immediately? Most likely not, but we've got 42 years to do that. So it should somehow ease down quite a lot. And some people just with moon, like George Clooney, for instance. So think about it. So what I'm wondering is, if you want to check whether you have got a prominent Sedna in your chart, so I'm going to show that to you. And what you can do is you can go on Astro.com and you go on your natal chart, and then you just want to type in your natal chart details. By the way, my Sedna is not prominent. What I would be focusing the most is surely opposition squares and especially conjunctions. Otherwise, I would say it might not be that important with shrines and all those type of things, okay? I just don't see that very prominent. But what you want to do here is that you want to scroll down and there is this manual entry. And here you want to put in Sedna's number, which is 90,377. Oh, here you go. And then when you click there, then you're going to be able to see that. Okay. And then you want to see, is Sedna on any of my personal planets, for instance? If you have got such things like Pluto and Sedna, which is impossible to have, but let's say Pluto and Sedna conjunction. I mean, you can have an opposition, by the way. Sorry about that. But that's more of an era, really, okay, which is very much somehow describing us the 90s, the early 90s. Obviously, that was really much about Russia and so forth. I'm not going to go into the 89s, 90s. You can think about it, what was going on there. Okay, but you can see that Pluto and Sedna is actually trining each other now. I still believe that this is the era when Russia is going to rise and most likely China too. So anything to do with them, can make people rich. But anyway, I don't have a prominent Sedna. But what you can do is you can have a look if you have got anything going on there, for instance, by progression. So do I have got anything, progressed wise? Can you see that my progressed moon is sitting on my Sedna? I just had my operation to start the transformation of my body because I'm getting tired of, having all this loose and baggy skin. So I just had it now. But also I've got the nodes hanging around that too. So which is important for our generation, whoever was born in 1986 and so forth. So that could be something to look at. And then you can look at, okay, do I have got anything going on by solar arc, for instance? Whatever timing technique you use, right? So I don't have anything there by solar arc. But do I have got anything on 6 degree, which is actually squaring, opposing? And I'm looking at it, nothing, okay? And so forth. So this is one way how you can check that. Or it could be also very good if you look at, okay, what's my solar return chart looking like? Do I have got anything on 6 degree of Taurus especially? Okay. And I don't have anything nearby in my solar return chart. Okay, maybe do I have got anything in the fixed signs? Nothing. Okay, so Sedna is just prominent in my solar return, sorry, my progress chart, but not necessarily so important with other timing techniques. And then you can look at whatever timing techniques you use. Okay. Now, as a final matter, I'm just wondering if anyone has got a prominent Sedna and they might want to share a little bit of Sednian, let's call it Sednian stories with us. If you do so, raise your hand. I understand if you don't want to because it's a public video, but if you want to, I'm more than happy to give you voice. And by the way, I did mention that I think the gender modification and the DNA related matters and all these type of things are going to grow significantly. The social media is so much full of people about their, whether I'm transgender or these type of things, and people are given voice to actually say that, you know what, you are not right. You were born as a boy, don't expect me to call you as she or whatever. And the social media is crazy now about that topic. I would like to emphasize that, I have got my own opinion about it, which I don't want to talk about. I did mention this example not because I agree with whatever these people are saying, but I'm also saying that I don't say also that I disagree. Okay. So I don't want to share my public opinion about this topic. Um, but I think it's said now also. Okay. What is causing this is one of the component, by the way, which is causing this topic. Obviously, we have got out of bound Mars going on in the sign of Gemini as well currently. So, you know, this misconception about gender and identity is very Gemini flavor anyway. Great. So, guys, this is the end of my presentation about Sedna. I don't think anyone wants to share personal stories, and I completely understand. But what you can do is look at Sedna activations in your chart, you know, and, in what ways were you abused around that time? And the house position is important here. So maybe in the 10th house, I don't know, Mars was conjuncting your Sedna, and then you felt that your boss sexually assaulted you. Okay. And then if you don't mind sending me an email about your personal experiences with Sedna, not because I really want to dig into your life, but I want to do, Sedna is just discovered 20 years ago. And, we still need information to testify about the discoveries, my previous people, my previous astrologers and stuff like that did. And it's always about how to take it further, right? Because it's a new object, it's just 20 years old. We don't have enough knowledge about it. So we need people who are going to be discovering this object a little bit further, which is loads of work. So thank you, everyone. And don't forget to sign up for my abundance course. It's going to be full on information. And I will see you in a couple of weeks' time with another video. And that's going to be about the Venus retrograde in Leo, which is going to be coming up. And I will make a free of charge webinar about that too. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye. And see you tomorrow, whoever is joining tomorrow. Bye-bye.